Hey, listeners, welcome to Before You Knew Me. Today, we're diving into an incredible story with Heather Voigt. Heather's tale is about overcoming the odds, navigating life's trials, and making a real difference in the world, especially for individuals with disabilities. Join us as Heather shares how she navigated the rough waters to find her place, the impact of her work today, and the lessons learned along the way.
This episode is sponsored by the Wyoming Rose, my amazing neighbor from Sundance, Wyoming. So check out her online store for more stunning designs. Follow the link in the comments or the description to browse her collection and enjoy an exclusive discount. Support a fantastic local business and look fabulous doing it.
Heather, thank you so much for being here and joining us today. I cannot wait to hear about everything that we're going to unpack today because I know there's a lot, and I know there's a lot of your story that can help so many people out there. But first, I just want you to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you too. My name is Heather Voigt. I am a mother of 4. I have 3 boys, and I thought our family was complete. And then, surprise, here's our little girl. And she definitely completed our family, keeps us on our toes, and all the lovely things that go along with mothering, right?
Absolutely.
I have an amazing husband who is so supportive of me and all the crazy things that I decide that we're going to do. Yes. And so I am actually a co-business owner and a case manager for the developmental disabilities waiver for the state of Wyoming. So those are just a few of the hats that I wear.
Absolutely. I know there are a lot of hats that you wear, and I can't wait to just take one off at a time. That's why it's so exciting to talk to people like you, because there's so many people that get inspiration from somebody doing something, just one thing, right?
Yeah.
But when you're able to talk to somebody who's able to do multiple things at once, like, that's so inspiring on so many levels. And so I really want to be able to start from the beginning, though, and talk a bit about like just the challenges that you've had to face through life, because that's what this podcast is all about, right? Before You Knew Me. So there's so many people that know what you're doing today and how you're doing it, but they don't know the story behind how you got there.
Yeah, you bet. So I think, as we're walking through this thing called life, there's so many pivotal moments that really define us. It could be good and bad, right? And it's working through making sure that we don't allow the negative to hold us back and to define us moving forward. And so I was a teen mom. I grew up in a very small community, found out I was pregnant at a very young age. I was 16, and then I had him when I was 17. And the shock that comes with all of that was really pivotal in my life, and working through those trials really, really were difficult at the time, and then you get on the other side of it because he's now almost 24 and you're like,
oh, wow.
I did that. Okay. Like, and it is like having a baby, right? Like, it feels so painful and hard in the moment, but you work through it and you're on the other side, and now you can talk about it and you can help others with your story, hopefully. And I had an amazing support system, so that helped a lot. But, it really was difficult. I thought at the time what I had in a partner was what I needed and wanted in my life, and really growing to understand what I was willing to accept in somebody that you walk through experiences with was really also defining and realizing what my worth was, because so much of it was wrapped up in what I thought I knew, what he led me to believe I should know about myself. So, it was really unhealthy. And I think that so many times girls, young girls and older girls, right? Like, we all struggle in certain areas. Like, you can't get wrapped up in unhealthy relationships that really don't serve you in ways that just aren't healthy. And so, I didn't listen to the advice of my family and friends for a long time, and I didn't see it. And I had the idea in my head and the plan that this was going to, be a family situation. And I wanted that for my child, but really understanding that he would rather grow up in a healthy home and with a happy mom, even if that doesn't look like what I originally thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I can appreciate that wholeheartedly. I cannot appreciate what it's like to have a baby because I have not had one of those.
Yeah.
But I hear that it can be a painful experience. But I mean, you're right. There are so many of us, and like women especially, because obviously that's very near and dear to our heart because we are women. But at the same token, I think there are a few men out there that get really rung through the ringer too with a different, spouse that they thought it was everything that they wanted them to be. But again, like you said, it's like what you knew at the time. And man, like just growth in general, the life in general that we go through, and even in a short amount of time, can make all the difference as to what you're willing to accept and what you're no longer available for.
Right. And I think there are those hard seasons that you're going to work through, but there's a reason that you have to go through them.
Sure.
They will set you up and prepare you for something. And you don't know what that plan is at the time, but really working through that and figuring that out is so important. And I know without just a few situations that I've gone through that were really hard, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so, like I wouldn't change that experience for anything in the world, because my son is going to grow, and he is, into this amazing man who I pray is an amazing dad and a great partner, in spite of everything that he does, and he does struggle with, different situations that we went through. But he's, we're helping him work through that, and being happy and whole in himself is also something that you can't anticipate. And when you're going through it, you don't know what's on the other side waiting for you, and when you're young and inexperienced, you have no idea, and it's like that thing, like, what would my 40-year-old self say to my 15-year-old self? Like, there's a lot that I wish I knew and which I was prepared for. But
what if you had to give just anybody who, I mean, because let's face it, teen mom pregnancy happens all the time. And I mean, I can only imagine how it is to go through a situation like that, because there's a lot of feelings behind that, a lot of unknowns, and nobody in this world likes to have the unknown. But if you could give maybe just one ounce of encouragement for anybody who, might be going through that currently, or not even, it doesn't even have to be encouragement, but just what's one thing that you would have told your 15-year-old or 16-year-old self, right? Like, what would one thing be?
That's a great question. And I've thought about this a lot. And I think it's, don't settle. Don't settle for things in life. Don't play small. That's something that I've learned just recently. Like, you can allow people to, and allow life to happen to you, or you can allow life to happen for you. And really taking those trials and turning them somehow into triumphs. And you can.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it can be done. And so finding your way through that is really important, and don't settle.
Yeah.
Don't settle. Women are so more capable of so much more than you allow yourself to believe.
It's true.
It really, really shocks me when I look back and see, where I was and how far I've come, but also other people's stories that I've listened to. And it's like, women are amazing. Like, embrace that. And rise to the occasion, and find your support too,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you had to find support through that whole ordeal that you went through.
Yeah.
I mean, were you, just because you have brought up the relationship too, were you with that guy, and you guys were trying to make it work? Is that how you guys landed in the relationship?
With it being so unhealthy and so toxic, I obviously didn't really realize to the gravity at the time. We were so on and off. So on. We were, just two young, broken people trying to do life together, and it was not working. So we finally broke up for the last time when my son was like 8 or 9 months old.
Okay.
So, and then I knew, I was getting ready to go off to college.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want him to go into the next stage of my life with me. I want to see what I can do with me and my son. So, and we did. We moved away from my parents, which was difficult. And I was just doing life one day at a time with a 1-year-old. So,
yeah, absolutely. Where did you end up going to college at?
In Rapid City.
In Rapid City. Okay. Rapid City, South Dakota, for those who do not know this area.
Yep. So ultimately, that is what led me to my husband. And so, it was a few years down the road, but, I just know that was part of the plan. So
yeah, absolutely. And what was it that you went to school for?
Originally, I went for nursing. Because I had such an amazing experience when I had my son, I wanted to be able to impact other maybe teen moms, in a way, and help them and give them the care and the confidence that they would need to take home a baby, because that is at any age so scary, right? Like, you are
like, what is this thing and what do I do with it?
I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but here I am. So, so I just really wanted to be able to work through that in a way and help other people. Ultimately, that's not the path that worked out, but that, again, also part of the plan. And it's so hard to know when you have an idea of what you're doing, really understanding and embracing God's plan for our lives. He knows better than we do. But at the time, I was like, why is this happening? So I worked so hard for this, but it just, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's not what I was supposed to be doing and where I was serving. So,
literally yesterday, I was reading somebody else's thought process on, does everything in life happen for a reason?
Okay.
And their opinion, because, everybody's going to have their own opinion, but their opinion was no. And I really resonated with that because, I have been struggling with this everything happens for a reason for probably 5 years now. And I was like, wait, somebody else said no? now I got to learn more.
We've all been told, right?
Right. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I think it's just a matter of my brain just digs into things a weird way. But at the same token, it was a matter of we do live in a fallen world and Satan is among us and he is trying to, destroy every good thing that God has planned. So bad things are going to happen. But at the same token, those bad things is what God can make work for his good, So it's it was interesting to me because I was like, yeah, I feel that,
Right.
Yeah, so I love that you brought it up, and it was just significant to my day yesterday. But speaking of your career, you went to school for nursing, and you found out, was it a matter of you just didn't enjoy the schooling? What was it that kind of pushed you in a different direction, and how did you get pushed at that point?
A couple things. It just wasn't. I think I believed about myself for so long that I wasn't smart. You can, get into self-identity and it's that fixed versus growth mindset. And I think I really believed that I wasn't smart enough for it. But at the end of the day, when I was bringing, my next children home, I was like, I don't want to be working holidays and night shifts. And, and it really was hard, but I came to terms with it and that I, didn't complete the education and, I only made it so far. And then I was like, okay, this isn't, you can't force things either, if you keep, beating your head against the wall and trying to do something that isn't meant for you, you'll find that out. And
your head is going to start to hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So is this where you met your husband too, at school?
Funny story. I just told
Okay.
so I needed math tutoring.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went in to get help at the college with my math class. And it was my math tutor that said, "Hey, you should go on a date with my boyfriend's best friend." Because we actually lived in the same apartment complex and we didn't even know that either.
Oh, sure.
So she's like, "Don't you live in my apartment?" I'm like, "I don't know. Do I?" And then we got to talking, and I had just gotten out of a really serious relationship that I thought was where I was going to be. That didn't also work out. And so, like within a month, like that had just happened like the month prior. She's like, "You should go on a date." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm ready for a date, especially a blind date. Like,
Right.
what the heck?" And so I did. And the rest is history. So we always joke, if I wasn't bad at math, the plan wouldn't have worked out.
So wait,
I
I
wasn't.
have to make a joke. I have to make a joke about
Okay.
Campbell County High School. Did you go to Campbell County High
I
School?
did not. I grew up
Oh, you went where?
in Newcastle.
Oh,
So the
okay.
joke might apply to there too. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say anybody who graduates from Campbell County High School is always bad at math. That's the joke. And I am living proof of it. And it's just, yeah. So the fact that you're around the area, we'll say that.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, I love that. So what about, I mean, like, just because I want to touch on this a little bit more, just because like coming out of a bad relationship and then just knowing that that's not what you wanted for yourself, like, how did you determine that this was then the right direction? Because let's face it, how many of us have come out of a bad relationship and we're like, like I did it with my own husband. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope, we're not going there. I'm not doing this, and then, it just eventually trickled. So what was it for you that made you realize that, hey, this is healthy. This is a good thing. Like, I'm going to pursue this.
Well, it's always hard too, because when you've gone through something like that, you doubt yourself, right? Like, Is this me? Is this my picker that's off? Is it me that's not healthy enough for a relationship?
Yeah.
I asked myself that a lot. I was like, is it possible that I'm the one that caused all of this, drama?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. I was able to go into another, relationship and be healthy-ish, right?
Yeah.
Like, we could all use a little therapy in our lives, but yeah, I think just like the red flags, making sure that you're watching for those and not ignoring them, no matter how bad you are tired of being alone. And I was at that time, I was raising a 4-year-old by myself. And I was like, it could be really easy to like, it'd be so nice to have somebody walk through this with me and like have the support and the help. But I knew I wasn't going to settle again. I knew I wanted more for my son than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted more for myself than that. And so it just was so easy. And I was like, should it be this easy? Like, that was another thing I had to quit. Like, you don't fight every day or break up. I'm so confused.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is so true. It's like, wait, this is really easy. Something must, and then we like are sitting there thinking something must be wrong, right? Yeah. But it's not. Like, society might tell you that there's something wrong with an easy like relationship, but it's really not. It's really what you want to look for, honestly.
Yeah. And marriage is going to be easy every day, but it shouldn't look like what I thought.
Yeah.
Originally. And so you're going to have to work at it. You're going to have to try and be intentional in that relationship. But yeah, it was so easy.
I love that so much. And so he was with you then as you figured out that nursing school wasn't necessarily for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what was it after that, as far as, moving forward in a career path? And the reason why I think it's so important to bring him up is the fact that I'm sure he was a big support with you in this whole situation. I mean, not only just the kids, but, being able to help support you in your career choice too.
So that's actually an interesting question. So we had a lot of big things happen. He proposed and we were going to get married. And then a few months later, he took a job here in Gillette with the railroad. Then we got married, we moved, then we found out we were pregnant all within like 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
It was a really big transition.
Woo! Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, everything happened so fast. But I wanted something that would accommodate being a mom. That was what was really important to me, but still needing an income. And I do enjoy people and working. And so I was a substitute teacher for many years, and that worked really good with the school schedule. And at the time I had a 7-year-old and I was about to have a newborn. So, and I subbed for a couple years, and then I was in a classroom. What I preferred to do when I was subbing was special education, and physical education. So those two of like the areas that I just gravitated towards. And so once you get in, then they're like, hey, like they'll request you. And, I think it is a little bit more, I don't want to say difficult, but it takes a special person to be able to walk into a special education class and be comfortable and confident in being able to assist the way that you need to sometimes. And it was when I was subbing at a school here in town, and the teacher and the para started talking about how they needed more case managers in town. And I was like, what is that? And I just started asking questions. And then I, got on the website and found out more. I didn't even know it existed. Like growing up in a small community, my knowledge of people with special needs, that are differently abled, was so minimal. I did not have any, I didn't know, how they got cared for, what that entailed, who paid for that kind of thing. I had zero answer information. So I applied and worked through the process. And the way it works is it's client choice. So they have to choose to work with you.
Okay.
So I sat on the provider list. There really wasn't any movement in my area at the time. Nobody was changing or getting funded or anything like that. And so I sat on the provider list and continued subbing and doing a few other odds and end jobs here and there, and just waited kind of for my client load to grow. Mm-hmm. So here I am today.
Well, there's so much more to that, Heather. So it was it a matter of like you becoming your own boss then, like with the case management program? Yeah. So how did you even go about doing that?
So you are a contract worker for the state of Wyoming, essentially.
Okay.
And so you really have a lot of flexibility on how many clients you want to take, who you want to take, what counties you want to serve, and things like that. So there's a lot of flexibility in my schedule and my workload, and I can make all of those choices for myself and what's working for me at this time. So
awesome. Yeah. And at the end, as you were talking about, coming from a smaller town and just not having the knowledge behind all that, how did you go about getting, to where you are successful in the case management world?
It's a learning process. And I think just as and they do kind of the state is great about asking questions, but there's not a whole lot of information. They're just kind of thrown in and kind of navigate it through on your own. I did have a supervisor at the time that was really, really helpful. And I don't know how anybody would do it had I not worked for that company at that time. I eventually did go out on my own and became, my own boss. But it really comes from a place of having the heart to want to help and finding a way. I have found that I can find a solution to almost anything, any problem, big or small. Most of the time I can solve it. And it really comes from just the desire and the persistence to want to find that answer for these families.
Yeah, absolutely. And just give us because I did not know anything about case management whenever I talked to you the first time. So give us a little rundown of exactly what it all entails for somebody.
Okay, so I will tell you, let's just start from the beginning. So right now they're actually able to fund quite a few people off of the waiting list. And the waiting list was about 2.5, 3 years long. And the state did get a big surplus of money to fund quite a few people. So in the last couple of months, I've I've added about 10 or 12 new clients to my already very full caseload. So when you're meeting with this family, you identify their goals, their needs, and put them in connection with community resources and providers who can care for them in their day-to-day.
Okay.
And then once that's all established, you're just making sure their needs are met, and that they're cared for in a way that keeps their integrity intact, that is respectful. So, and I do have a lot of children on my caseload, and walking through all of the struggles that come with their parents, kind of being a support. I can't begin to understand what it is to raise a child with special needs, but I know I want to walk through it with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really has evolved your whole career. I mean, because now you said you are co-owner,
Yes,
co-business owner on a company. So tell us a little bit more about that, because this is really just flowing perfectly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, in working with these families, I go into their homes on a monthly basis, kind of identify needs that they might have, find out what their goals are. And a lot of times they wanted a job. And it really was difficult to find them work that they would have the confidence to go into, because I think also their skill sets are so varying, and employers aren't really sure how to support them. And a lot of times they have needs that, that can't be met in your typical workplace. And so identifying that need is really where it came from, and figuring out how I'm going to solve it. So I was in a home visit with a family about 5 years ago, I bet. It's been a hot minute. Yeah. And they're like, hey, we were in the store in Spearfish, and they employ people with disabilities. And so I sat on that for a year and a half. I was like, I'm not doing that. But I did have the moment in my head. I was like, that's what our town needs, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah, right. Somebody else can do that. I come up with great business ideas. Yeah, come up with great business ideas all the time. I'm like, hey, you should do this.
Yeah. So I needed that problem solved, but I didn't have the confidence that I could do something like that, or that it was even something for me to do. And the nagging thoughts in my head and self-doubt and, creeped in, but it wouldn't go away. And I was like, okay, another God thing. I was like, okay, I'm listening. I'm hearing you. But in that process, he really did have to work through me. That saying when they say, when God wants you to move, he'll prepare you, and he'll move things out of your way that are stopping you. And it was difficult when things, get taken, but necessary.
Yeah.
And so you see that now, but at the time I was like, what is happening? It's heartbreaking and this is hard, but you can see why things happen. And so, I went to my business partner and I'm like, hey, let's do this. And she didn't act like I was crazy.
That's a plus.
That's how I knew. I was like, oh, okay. Like, it's not as crazy in my head as it is out with words, I guess. Right.
Right.
And so we kind of talked about it for a little bit, and well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to put the plan in place, And then a couple weeks later, I had hauled home a dresser found on Facebook. And I was like, honey, let's restore this, make it look pretty, because it was all broken. And so he's like, where are you going to put this? Why are we doing this? And I was like, it's going in my store. And he's like, we got a store? We're having a store? I'm like, yeah. And we had totes and totes and totes of all of our kids' old clothes. He's like, what are we going to do with this? And that was another, I was like, those clothes, those are going in my store too. That's why we've been saving those. Because if I put it into words, then it's just crazy. And then I'm going to be accountable for something, right?
Yep.
if I say it out loud, then it changes the trajectory and it changes the expectation. I'm like, so I just sat on it for a while. And when I, brought it up to people in my life, they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe this is doable. So here we are. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I find it interesting. And I just want to point it out that, as you were younger, having just the confidence in yourself and just knowing that you're capable of something, right? And here you are, wanting to tell your 15, 16-year-old self this, like, you can just dream big and go for it. And then here you are making another positive step in the direction that you want to go without knowing it. But it's not lost on me that there's still that confidence that still needs to be like pushed out, right? Because just like anything, just starting it, it's like you have to believe in yourself in order for it to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I love that even after you've had all this success and all of this, wonderful stuff happening, it was still a matter of still having to push through. And I bring that up because I think too often people, it's like right now it's like the "it must be nice" phrase is thrown around a lot lately, and how people like hate that and despise it. Like, it must be nice. It's like, well, it's not easy, and it's like, I worked hard to get here. So even though things were going great, the fact that you're going to go start this other thing, it was not easy, and it's still even just building up the confidence in yourself to even go do it. So I think that's really powerful.
Like, the people in the cheap seats can have all the opinions that they want, but the price of admission is high, and there's a cost to that. And it's really moving into what you were made for. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I always believed that, right? Like, and as women, I think sometimes, depending on your experiences, like, you can play small, and allow other people in your life to make you feel like you have to play small, mm-hmm. and not move into what you are actually capable of. And so I can identify in myself that I did that for a really long time. And like I said, God will move the obstacle. If mm-hmm. he doesn't, what's the phrase? That he doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And I truly do believe that with everything in me. It's tough, but it's necessary.
Well, and I mean, the store that you started is a thrift store, correct?
Yeah.
Which is why you're able to save, the stuff from home and move it into the store. So how did that all evolve? And I mean, obviously you had the goal, like, you wanted to start a business to be able to help provide jobs for these folks. And once you're like, okay, now I'm going to start a thrift store, like, now how is that all thriving from there?
We really had to come up with a business model that had a lot of little tasks that no matter who walked in the door, that they could complete something, mm-hmm. Big or small. And so it just really made sense. And then the space next to us opened up. And so we had the opportunity to take that over. And so we're like, well, what can we put over there? And so we did the crate, like, it's the crate store business model where you get liquidated items, and as the supply diminishes, the price goes down. So, yeah.
I guess I have yet to be there to go look at that.
Yeah, so it's a really cool little place, and it gave us the ability to hire more people and have more space, because in what we had, you just have a few people, and it got pretty crowded. And so having, double the space, double the tasks really helped us further our mission. So,
I mean, I can only imagine how these folks are feeling. Like, because especially when you are special needs, like, there's so much that you just, like, you correct me if I'm wrong, because you work with these folks a lot more than I do, but I assume that there is this want to be more and do more. But like you said, there's only, you have to have specific jobs in order to make sure that they're able to do the jobs. And they more or less, like, want to have a purpose. And so just the whole idea of even being able to get up in the morning and go to a job has to be so fulfilling to them. And
that was our goal for sure, just having a purpose,
yeah,
being somewhere that they belonged. And you can see over the decades how the evolution of these individuals' lives has changed and evolved over time. They were warehoused, and just kind of put in a room, not given the light. They were put in a box, essentially. Like people didn't acknowledge what they were capable of. They were just seeing the label that was being put on them. And so you can see how it has evolved and changed over time. And now the push is to get them in the community, get them in the least restrictive environment for them to live that and be successful, and put these supports in place so that they can accomplish things that they didn't know they could. And so it's really interesting because in my walk to realize, what I'm capable of, I'm also walking through helping them gain the confidence that they need to see what life could be like as well, depending on, their school experience or their family experiences, they could still feel like they fit in this tiny little box. And that's not what we want for their lives. And so really being an ally and stepping up in a way that I think the community, the country, as a whole, these people can really bring you fulfillment and joy, so much joy in a way that I never understood or saw. And also there's frustrations, right? Like there's obstacles and there's hard things that come with it, but it's really
with any human being.
And so it's really figuring out how you can navigate them in the way they think, the way they communicate, and meeting them where they are, getting them to a place that they can be understood and seen and heard and valued, and pushing them into the next thing, like believing that they can drive a car, believing that they can live on their own, believing that they can have a job and that they can socialize with the community. And I think that's too where our inexperience comes from, is that it wasn't something that we were always exposed to as, seeing somebody who might sound different, look different, act different, and knowing how to be in relationship with them. And so, you see that thing, we'll go back to all the quotes, instead of telling your little kid in a store, don't stare, like, no, tell them your name, go up and say, hey, it's nice to meet you, really helping your children through being in relationship and being able to treat them just as they would anybody else. And so in parenting, I wasn't as much in this role with my older boys, but now I've got, a 4-year-old who I don't know that she thinks there's anything different.
Right.
She will crawl up next to him and show him her YouTube, just like she would anybody at daycare or at the park or wherever we're at. She talks to him just like, and so it's really bringing awareness. And I think that is so important. So, you might not be able to start a store or, be a case manager to change their lives. But if you can just have a conversation with the next individual you see, or if you see a mom struggling with a behavior, not staring or placing judgment, but asking how you can help. It could be the smallest thing to help acknowledge and see these people and the struggle that they might face or the help that they might need. It doesn't have to be, huge, just the littlest thing will the big.
Absolutely. And, I love just hearing you talk about all of this, Heather, because I feel like you have really brought your life full circle. Because when you're talking about how, in the past, they're just like putting these people in cubicles or somewhere in a warehouse in a box, like they're just stuck in this box. And it's like, I feel like that was you, when you were a teen mom stuck in this relationship and just like you're stuck in a box. And so was there anyone for you that was able to help you build the confidence that was needed to take that step forward and out of the bad situation? Because I know that you're this person for so many others today.
I had never done the comparison, Drea, so it's really interesting that you bring that about now, because you are so right? Like,
it's a very real thing. I mean, it's
when you can relate, when you can see the similarities,
mm-hmm.
And why nothing else worked out and why the path led you where I am, where anybody is, right? Because it's going to feel right and it's going to feel natural.
Mm-hmm.
So the people, I don't have a ton of people in my life that are negative. Like
mm-hmm.
most people that I have and that I surround myself with are my cheerleaders. Like they don't look down on me. They don't not think that I can accomplish all these audacious things that I've, my husband, my parents, my closest friends are all like, whoa, okay, yeah, you can do this. So I think it's, again, not settling for relationships that don't serve you. You should be in a group of individuals that you are not the highest performing, right? Like surround yourself with people who believe more, who do more, and you're going to rise to that.
Mm-hmm.
The crabs in the bucket idea. If you're around people who are negative, who don't believe in themselves, who don't believe in growth, they're going to be like crabs in a bucket, and they're going to try to pull you down to their level, because you growing and you shining makes them see really, and bring out the self-doubt and the insecurities in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's eliminating those people from your life.